Hello and welcome to this demo. In this demo, we're going to demonstrate how to deploy a simple web application from scratch using a manual method. So this is so we know what we're trying to automate. I would recommend anyone to manually complete the steps once so we know exactly the steps involved in what we are automating. So these are the steps involved in deploying the web application. First, identify the web server that we're going to deploy the application on, and then install the Python dependencies, install and configure MySQL server and start the services, install Flask, download the source code, and then run the application. So we will try to do this once manually on a server. So the first step is to identify the server. So I have Oracle VirtualBox and I have a Ansible controller and 2 target servers. So I'm just going to try and deploy the web application on the target server 1 manually. So this is the target server 1 that I'm going to install on. I'm going to identify the IP address of the server, and then I'm going to SSH into that server. So the next step is to install Python dependencies. So I have the simple web application on my GitHub page, and I have all the instructions detailed here. So I'm going to follow this one by one. So the first step is to install Python dependencies. So I run the apt get install command to do that. And then I'm going to install the database, the MySQL server and MySQL client packages. Okay, and while installing MySQL, it asks for the root password. So I'm going to enter a root password for the MySQL server. Remember that this password will be used later during application configuration to connect to the application database. Okay, so next is to start the MySQL service. So service MySQL starts the MySQL service, and I can see that verify that it's running. I'm now going to connect to the MySQL database. And then I'm going to create a new database called employee_db. I'm going to create a database user that I can use to connect to the database. I'm going to grant permissions to for that user in the database. And then I'm going to change to that database using use. And then I'm going to create a table, an empty table called employees into that database. I will then add one line of test data into it. So that's about the database configurations. So the database is now ready. I will now go ahead and install the Python dependencies using pip install. So Flask is the first Python package that I need to install, followed by Flask MySQL, which is used by Flask to connect to the MySQL database. So basically, I'm done with the dependencies. The next step is to copy over the code, the source code. So I'm going to copy the source code from the app.py on my GitHub page, and I'm going to put that in an app.py file. And then I start the web server using the Python app.py command. So this web server is now running at the 5000 port. So it's currently running on 127.0.0.1. So I'm not going to be able to access it using its IP address because it's the loopback address that it's running on. So I'll have to change that. So I will run it with a different command. I will run it with the Flask command. The Flask command will allow me to expose the server on a different IP. So I set an environment variable called flask_app to app.py. And then I run the Flask application with a host parameter. That way I will be able to access, that way the server will run on 0.0.0, and this way I will be able to access the web page. So as you can see, I can now access the web server from that web page. If you look at the code, there are a few URLs that you can test. For example, if you go to / how are you, it's going to come back with a message saying I'm good, how about you? And if you try the URL read from database, it's actually going to read a value from the database. So that basically tests the database connectivity for us. So that's it. That's the basic simple web application. Let's go ahead and let's now try to automate this deployment using Ansible playbooks.